To order at 7 p.m. and we'll rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, a roll call.
Mrs. Barber.
Here.
Mrs. Junk.
Here.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Here.
Mr. Rivas.
Here.
Mrs. Witt.
Here.
Mr. Carey and Dr. Lawler are absent.
Okay, with 5 members present, we have a quorum. We would like to inform all board member attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. This meeting is open to the public in accordance with Phase 4 guidance issued by the Illinois Department of Public Health and the Illinois State Board of Education. Individuals are required to wear a face covering at all times while in the building, including during the meeting. The capacity in any room is limited to 50 and seats will be spaced a minimum of 6 feet apart. A COVID-19 screening will be conducted for all attendees. All right, is there anyone who wants to move something from consent to new business? Nope, seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And a roll call.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to the board and superintendent salutes.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to share an overall note of thanks to our entire district, our staff, our administration, teachers, and families, students for the successful return to school last week. I do have a few highlights I wanted to share and a few other things to note. As part of that process, we are now in week 2, and as you can see, the cafeteria looks different. Our pickup and drop-off looks different. There's cars everywhere, buses. It was great getting to a couple of our different buildings last week, seeing our students back together again. At our elementary schools, they did a real nice job of welcoming the remote students that came back to in-person. So they identified those students early and they had somebody meet them when they came to the door, make sure they walked them in if they needed help finding their classroom and introducing them to their teacher. The lunchrooms have been shifted and are a little different and very busy, but still going well. And then the self-certification took a little bit longer with new gatekeepers that we have in place now, but I'm sure they will perfect their roles. And also, we'll just continue to remind our families to self-certify so that when students come in, they can come in faster. It's just part of remembering the process. And then also, it just took a little while longer to get students in and off the buses and their entrances, but I'm sure they'll continue to work on that.
Pull your microphone.
I need to get closer. Thank you. Then also with staffing, as you know, the needs that we had ended up hiring between 15 and 20 new staff to help in various roles, from instruction to monitoring, hallway monitoring, security, to gatekeeping. And fortunately, I think we had all but one of those positions hired. And so I'm very appreciative because we couldn't do it without our entire community getting that work done. Also, at the middle school, one of the highlights was, as we talked about the transition back to in-person, one of the concerns was potentially a midday bus route, but kudos to transportation for their hard work to make sure that they could get enough of the routes shifted and enough drivers, so there's very few students that are now waiting after school to be transported home when that was initially going to be a concern. We have new cameras that have been ordered for quarantine students to be able to zoom into the classroom rather than just using a typical screen. So we have those. So thank the IT department. The moving of tables and desks and chairs was a 2-week process of balancing those out between our different schools and the different classrooms to get all the rooms ready. We have areas that have never been a classroom that are now a classroom, and offices. So the entire group was super helpful in everything that they did to transition back to school. So you'll probably see and hear a few other things in the presentations tonight, but I would just like to, again, a note of appreciation to our community, our staff, for all of the work to return to in-person. It has been a success. What I would share, and I know it was a question asked as we returned, I would share that the primary drawback that we're probably going to see will be our close contact students, with the positive cases with students closer together And again, the Kane County Health Department again today reiterated that they are not going to shift the close contacts from 6 feet down to 3 or anything else right now. So close contact at 6 with students at 3 is just going to increase the number of students close contacting. So while there's a ton of successes in the transition back and it went relatively well, I would say the one drawback that we may see are the number of students that have to quarantine. But again, we'll continue to work with them and our staff members to make sure that they're ready and that our students do well. Our other salute that I have, before we had a year and a half of remote learning, before we had a year and a half of return to learn plans, we did have a very successful strategic plan, Kaneland 2020, with one of the primary drivers was personalized learning, which will, in June, we'll share more with the board about Kaneland Connects, which is the successor strategic plan. Wanted to note an article from Northern Illinois with our own Northern Illinois University, with our own Dr. Mumm and Mr. Raleigh, who are here. They were noted and recognized for their work on personalized learning, the fact that they have written the curriculum for 2 classes that are used in 2 different departments, the departments of curriculum instruction and also the Office of Internal and Global Partnerships. So instead of, or in addition to personalized learning being a driver in our strategic plans here, it's also work at Northern that other districts and other students who are in either a certification, an endorsement, or a master's degree program are also benefiting from. So in addition to recognizing our entire community for our work, I'd also like to say thank you to Dr. Mumm and Mr. Raleigh for their work that they do at Northern. So we salute you. Those are the 2 salutes I had for tonight.
Great, any other salutes? All right, so seeing none, we will move on to public comment. So the rules of public comment, the board values public comment to inform our decision-making and to provide information and insight into what is happening throughout the district. Board meetings are held to conduct the business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they are not public forums. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. For that reason, the board does not enter into debate or respond to questions spontaneously or without proper investigation and deliberation. In most cases, concerns or questions requiring follow-up will be referred to the superintendent. If you choose to speak publicly, we ask that you do so at the microphone, state your name and village of residence or your association with us for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less so that all who wish to speak may have that opportunity. Public comment is a maximum of 30 minutes with a 20-minute total length of any time for one subject. You're encouraged to seek a private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. While public education can be an emotional issue, and understandably so, the board strives to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Those who speak are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. The floor is open to public comment, with the first person being Robert Murphy.
Good evening. My name is Robert Murphy, and I'm a resident of the village of Elburn. I currently have 1 child at the Kaneland High School, and I have 3 children who are proud alumni of the Kaneland School District. I am here tonight to express the sincere appreciation of the Kaneland parents and students who recognize and acknowledge the thoughtful and dedicated efforts taken by the Board of Education, the Kaneland administration, teachers, and support personnel to ensure the health and well-being of our children during the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. I have worked in the public health field for 25 years in both higher education and government service. I hold an advanced degree in the specialized field of public health, and I hold a professional certification in my field. I personally applaud your efforts, commitment, and your steadfast leadership in protecting the public health of our Kaneland community, and most importantly, our children with this extraordinary public health crisis. Your work was not easy. You were confronted with extremely difficult challenges and decisions, which were made even more difficult in a polarized political and social environment. A job most of you did not foresee when you took your positions as stewards of our children's education. You've approached and conducted your duties with the highest degree of professionalism and respect. You made the best, sound, and well-informed decisions possible with the available scientific and medical information at each stage to protect the public health of our community. You've recognized and acknowledged opportunities of improvement, a hallmark of true leadership. To each Board of Education member I say, you swore an oath which bound you to a multifaceted responsibilities to the students, teachers, and staff. This is not a small undertaking under normal conditions. Your responsibilities were exacerbated by the additional moral and legal obligations related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Your goals and objectives were clear: to ensure, to the best of your ability, the public health and security of our children, our teachers, and our staff, while providing an educational service mandated by law. Every choice, every decision was hard to make, and you did not take that responsibility lightly. There was no easy choice to make, and no way to make everyone happy. There was no win-win scenario, and we all can agree that it was not an ideal educational environment, no matter what you decided. Each decision had its numerous and onerous ramifications and hardships. You took the high road, which proves an example to our students to follow in the future, and we thank you for it. In conclusion, to the Board of Education, Kaneland administrators, Kaneland teachers, and Kaneland staff, thank you. Thank you for your dedication and service in providing a safe environment for our children and education. I appreciate this opportunity to address the board this evening. Good night.
Thank you. Jackie Fry.
My name is Jackie Fry. I'm from Sugar Grove. My daughter has been part of the Kaneland School District since the day she turned 3 years old and joined the early childhood program at McDowell. She had severe speech delays, social and developmental delays, but she also had the most incredible teachers, therapists, and counselors we could have ever hoped for. Today, she's a junior at Kaneland High with straight A's, and she's a member of the chess team and the National Honor Society. I've been her strongest advocate for 17 years, and today she advocates for herself as well. But where do you go when there seems to be no one to advocate to? When you don't feel that the Board of Education is listening to what you say? When you know that your teachers are doing their very best, but they have to cram everything into 2 days a week? We as parents are doing the very best for our children, but when it comes to their education, we have put our trust in you. After the March 18th board meeting, I had very mixed feelings. Like so many other parents, I was thrilled to see that our K through 5 kids would be going back to school full-time, in person, 5 days a week after spring break. Then we learned that the middle school would be going back 5 days a week also, but only for half days, with shortened class times and no lunches. And the high school got nothing, not even an extra hour of Zoom on Wednesdays. Now it's a month later, and we're at another board meeting. And when I looked through the agenda items for tonight, I saw nothing about return to learn, nothing about feeding the middle schoolers lunch, and nothing about the high schoolers getting a proper education this next year. Now, I did see an agenda item that was listed as the Superintendent Report out, and I emailed Dr. Layden, and he was kind enough to confirm that he will be updating us tonight on the plans for the 21-22 school year. So I do appreciate that, and I look forward to hearing the report. But I must emphasize that what I most want to know is, when are the middle schoolers and the high schoolers going back to school 5 days a week, full-time? I don't want to hear any more fancy jargon. I don't want to hear any more talking in circles. All I want is answers, and I truly, truly hope that we will hear them tonight. If we don't, then I'm just going to keep asking the questions. And if you doubt it, you can ask anybody who was on any of my daughter's IEP teams back at McDowell. I really don't give up very easily. So I thank you.
Thank you. Tonya Grossinger.
I'm Tonya Grosinger from Maple Park, and I'm here tonight to discuss my disappointment and disgust really with this district currently. I'm extremely happy to hear or to see that our K through 5 is going back, that our 6th through 8th graders are getting a little bit more of what they deserve. But I have sent emails, I have asked questions, I've gotten no responses from administration. I've been lied to my face by administration about certain subjects. Our kids are suffering. There's nothing in the agenda about how grades are for second term or a second trimester or how they're going currently. We've pushed back SEL, which is probably one of the most important things that we need to know for this year, and that's been pushed back. Mr. Carey asked for it to be presented in March, and now it even got pushed back even further than when it was supposed to be presented. I was told to my face that there was a return to learn plan in place for when guidance has changed. Nothing was done. It was scramble time for the board and for the administration, and that's extremely disheartening and extremely unacceptable. I don't take kindly to being lied to my face, and that's exactly what happened to me. And I'm extremely upset. I'm so nervous for my child to come to Kaneland schools next year. He deserves a proper education like every other student, and if this is the type of thing that I'm going to be getting, then I might move. I don't deserve to be ignored. I don't deserve to be lied to, and neither do any of these parents. I understand you guys are busy. Copy and paste answers are not responses. Our kids are our priority, and you chose this career, these positions, you chose to do this. We deserve the respect of being answered. Thank you.
Thank you. So tonight, the consent agenda consists of the following action items: the approval of accounts payable and payroll March 2021, approval of treasurer's report March 2021, approval of minutes of the March 8th, 2021 regular meeting and the March 18th, 2021 special meeting, approval of resignations, terminations, and employment of staff, approval of destruction of audio recordings from closed session meeting from September 2019, approval of bid for athletic training service, approval of bid for fuel, approval of bid for copy paper, approval of bid for disposal and recycling service, approval of bid for snow removal services, approval of bid for special education transportation services, approval of bid for fire system inspection services, approval of classroom use agreement with Mid-Valley Special Education Cooperative, approval of storage use agreement with Mid-Valley Special Education Cooperative, and the following information items: the Freedom of Information Act request report. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And a roll call.
Mrs. Pavlak?
Aye.
Mr. Rivas?
Aye.
Mrs. Barber?
Aye.
Mrs. Witt?
Aye.
Mrs. Junk?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to J1, discussion and approval of extended day kindergarten fees.
Yes, thank you, President Sparber. With that topic being asked to be brought back to the board for further discussion and recommendation, I'll turn it over to Dr. Fuchs, and she can walk us through the memo and then see what questions and recommendation that the board has.
Great, thank you, Dr. Layden. The extended day kindergarten tuition was established when we started the program. The purpose of the tuition was to cover approximately 50% of the staff's salaries specifically related to the extra half day, which is an optional program. So therefore, if parents signed up and paid the tuition, it would offset the salary of those teachers for that portion of the day that is optional. For that portion of the day, the students that are enrolled in that program do not receive any new content, but they do receive extra extended activities and also additional specials classes. We do reduce that monthly tuition of $250 to $150 if the students are in either the free or the reduced lunch program. This year, the parents have paid the tuition from September through March. We did not charge in December because of the adaptive pause. There's one more month that they need to pay, which is April, and most of them by the board date tonight have paid that. The May payment was paid last February when they made their deposit. We take that deposit and we use it for their May payment. So we do just have one more month of money to collect. At this time, students, elementary students, extended day kindergarten, those students are in class 5 days a week. So we do not believe that a reduction would be necessary for April and May. This year, 50% of that staff salary that I spoke of is approximately $285,000. We've got more than that in the budget expected because we've lost a lot of enrollment between last February and then this fall as things developed, specifically the hybrid schedule and kindergarten numbers. So that's why there's such a difference between the budgeted amount and the amount that we have collected. As of March 31st, we've received approximately $198,000. We expect about $25,000 more for a total of $223,000. If the administration refunds 50% of this tuition for 6 months, that would be September through March without December, the refunds would be approximately $75,000. We believe that this would be the appropriate amount of the refund in light of the COVID situation and the hybrid structure. At this time, that is the administrator's recommendation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Julianne, you stated the difference between the actual, if you will, my words, that they both get the same
Core content.
core content, thank you. And then the extended ones get activities and things of that sort, right?
Extra practices.
Extra practice, okay. So, the reason I'm saying that is because I know somebody had sent us a comparison, they were kind of equal, if you will, so that's the explanation in reference to that, then?
So I think it's about perception, because if the students are in class 5 days a week, they get extra teacher face time for that extra half of the day. But where they've only been in class 2 to 3 days a week, the teachers were responsible for sending home those additional activities and additional practices, which they've done. It's just that they're not getting that extra face time, which is what, when the parents put their deposit down and signed up, that's what they were expecting to get for that money. So there's a discrepancy between what we said that they would get in February and what they actually got once we got to the hybrid model.
Okay, all right, so, all right, just wanted to get the clarity on that.
But
All right,
even
thank you.
when they were, when we're under normal circumstances, non-COVID, that was the plan all along, was that the core curriculum was always going to be the same, and that the additional time was just additional practice and content surrounding what they'd learned in the core curriculum,
That is
if I
correct.
remember right. Okay,
Yep, that's absolutely correct.
thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the administration to refund 50% of EDK tuition for 2020-21 school year for 6 months, September through March, except December.
So moved.
In a second,
Second.
a roll call.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye,
Mrs. Sparber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
And Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to J2, approval of 2021 summer school fees.
Yes, typically in the spring at this time, our summer school program and plans and fees are presented to the board and approved. And as you recall, as some of our conversations after some of the student achievement updates and academic updates had some feedback from the board and recommendations from administration to shift a little bit of the summer school programming and some of the costs. And so with that, if Laura is ready, I will turn it over to Laura, and you can walk us through the presentation.
Okay, good evening. So we'll go over the summer programming that will be offered and the proposed fees to cover those programs. We'll start with the elementary programming.
Comprehensive courses have always been offered historically at the elementary level, and we do propose to continue to offer those. The fee typically is $100 for the math session and $125 for the ELA session. Our proposal, given the impact of COVID this year, is that any student who has received a beginning rating on the majority of their second trimester academic standards, that the fee be waived for those students based on that identified academic need. We do also want to keep the opportunity available for families that do not necessarily have an academic need but choose to engage in further exposure. For those families, we would keep the fees at the $100 for math and the $125 for ELA. Enhancement camps will continue to be offered for students, and at the elementary level, there are 2 different opportunities. Enhancement camps are similar to a Park District program. Those are offered just based on topics that teachers propose, and we do have 2 for the elementary level. And those sessions will continue to be $70. Those would be the fee for all students. Those are not based on academic need at all. And then finally, at the elementary level, we're adding something we're calling the seminar course. And this is for students with specific identified gaps in learning in either ELA or math, targeting students that have a beginning or a developing in standards-based on a minimum of 3 second trimester standards in either reading, writing, or math. And we are going to separate out writing separate from reading to really be able to target that specifically. Again, like the comprehensive courses, we want to make these available to families that don't necessarily have students with an academic need, but just choose to partake in those additional exposures. For those families, the 1-hour seminar session in any of those content areas would be offered at $70 for the hour. We'll move on to middle school. Middle school has always had a comprehensive content review. This is an online program through Edmentum. It has historically been offered for middle school students who have not earned a passing grade in a course. For the middle school level, participating in the Edmentum online program does not change their grade, but it does address some gaps that will leave them better prepared for instruction in the fall. We are again proposing that the fee be waived for this course for any middle school students who are not at this point passing a class. Edmentum is open to any student who might just enjoy a content area, want to engage further, have some additional exposure. If a family were to choose that path and there was not an identified academic need, they could participate at the fee of $150, which is consistent with what we've offered that at in the past. Additionally, there will be enhancement camps at the middle school level that teachers have proposed. The total amount of teacher content time within those camps varies a bit, so the fees align with the amount of contact time the students would have with the teachers. They would range from 70 to 100, depending on which course the students decided they wanted to have some enhancement in. The seminar courses we're going to bring to the middle school level as well. And it will follow similarly to the elementary, that we're proposing that the fee be waived for any students who have an identified academic need, defined as lacking proficiency on a minimum of 3 reported standards in either ELA or math. If a family chose to partake for additional exposure, then they could also do that. The fee would be $70, the same as the elementary. Jumpstart to 6th grade will continue to be offered at the $75 fee that it's historically been offered at. And finally, high school. Credit recovery has always been an option for students who have not passed a class during the school year, and that will continue to be offered. We do propose that the fee be waived for students who have failed to pass a course during this academic year. This will continue to be offered through the Edmentum program as it has in the past. There will be an opportunity for students to seek office hours for additional support during that program. Typically, students only would participate in this course if they had failed to pass a class, as it does go through the majority of that course content. Our 4 credit, well, I'll skip over to seminar. So seminar would be again added to the high school level, similar to elementary and middle school. It would focus on closing identified gaps in learning in either English or math courses. We do recommend that the fee for these sessions be waived for any student with an identified academic need. defined as lacking proficiency on a minimum of 3 reported standards in either math or English at the end of the 3rd quarter. For the seminar courses at all levels, we also are going to be having teachers send a specific invitation to students, and so if the student receives an invitation and has that academic need, we propose the fee be waived. If a student wanted to seek additional further exposure to help prepare them better in the fall, they could also choose to do that at that same $70 fee as the other 2 levels. And then our 4 credit courses we have always offered in personal finance, government, and communications, and we'll continue to offer those 3 options for students who want to take those classes over the summer to open up their schedule during the school year to other exploratory options. The fee for those courses has always been $200, and we propose it remains at $200. However, if a student did participate in one of those courses, one of those 3 offered courses, during this current school year and failed to earn a passing grade, for those students specifically, we would propose that the fee be waived for a 4-credit course. And then same with enhancement classes. Those, again, are similar to the Park District opportunities for exploration and extension. At the high school, we have several opportunities. They range from $70 to $125, just based on the amount of student contact time. The estimated total cost for summer programming is broken down here for you. At the elementary level, we are estimating, and I'm going to use that word strongly, estimating $40,000. Middle school would be $2,500. That is lower because of the fees charged for Jumpstart. It offsets some of the costs that we could anticipate due to waiving fees in other areas. At the high school, $13,000 is the estimate, and again, that's a bit lower than elementary because several students do participate in those 4-credit courses, and we anticipate that offsetting the overall cost. Administration and support staff cost is estimated at $6,300. That will vary based on which students register for summer school and whether they need paraprofessional support, nursing support, any type of support staff would fall in that category. So our overall estimated summer school cost with the proposed fee waivers for the programs indicated would be $61,800.
Do you know what the cost would be compared to last year? Like if you're netting things that you usually get as revenue?
Yeah, so I can look that up. I can't give you numbers off the top of my head. What I can tell you is that in certain areas, we saw a large increase in summer school registration last year after there was the shutdown all over. So because it was offered remote, transportation was no longer a barrier, and so more students were able to participate because of that. Also, with sports not happening, that was no longer a conflict. So last year's numbers probably wouldn't be the best comparison, but we can certainly go back several years and find that.
Okay.
This, I will tell you, would be more than what it typically would cost. Okay. And then just wanting to raise your awareness to factors that certainly are going to be impacting these estimates that we've pulled together. Obviously, the number of students that register will be a factor. The number of sections needed, as we still will need to maintain the 3 feet of social distancing between students in the summer programs as of the guidance we have now. The number of fee waivers, it's difficult to estimate how many families will choose to partake in these sessions when there is not an academic need, and how many fee waivers to expect due to free and reduced lunch status. Individualized education plans sometimes have summer programming written into them, and then the number of students that qualify based on academic eligibility. Enhancement camps, while those will generate revenue, it's difficult to anticipate how much, as we did set minimum student registration numbers, and if we don't meet those minimums, we won't run those camps. And then finally, it's difficult to anticipate the number of paraprofessional and/or nurse support, given that we don't yet know which students will be registering. Some just general information. We will, a change this year is that we will be offering the elementary sessions at both John Shields and Blackberry Creek. If you recall, last year everything was held at Harder, so we're trying to expand back into the community to make the transportation issue a little less of a barrier. Middle and high school sessions will both be held at Harder. We anticipate being able to communicate with the community regarding summer school on April 16th. That's an anticipated date, as we are still waiting for some of the documentation to be translated and for some of the behind-the-scenes registration work to be completed. Regardless, we will send some type of communication on the 16th to let them know when to be expecting more. Our registration window, we are hoping to be able to open that April 19th and run it through May 7th. It will occur through the web store if there is a fee associated with the course. If there is a fee waiver involved, the registration would have to happen through Google Docs or through a paper registration form, which we would make readily available. And all of that information would certainly be included to families when we send that information out. Any questions I can answer for you?
I just wanted to say thanks, because I know we've been asking and suggesting, I think several board members, different ones at different meetings said, you know, please offer a robust summer school program so that, you know, we can serve as many kids as possible, and especially the ones that are failing and or need credit recovery, you know, that the fees be waived. This, my opinion, this is great. This is perfect. It's what I was hoping for. So thank you to everybody that was involved in developing the plan.
I was just curious, if registration deadline is May 7th, but that semester hasn't ended by then, right? Are students will they all be notified, hey, we think that you're going to fail this course, and parents are notified?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that. So that's typical every year with summer school. We try to have that registration cutoff, but any student who is not aware of their status or you know, was working hard to bring something up and it just didn't work out in their favor, we wouldn't turn a student away. Often in high school, we have students register for credit recovery after the registration deadline, and we have systems for that.
Thank you.
And Mr. Rowley just did some math for me, and the 5-year average costs for summer school is approximately $35,000.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions? No? All right, I will entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the 2021 summer school program as presented.
So moved.
All right, we'll go with Teresa and Gail, you're second?
I'll second.
All right, and a roll call.
Mrs. Sparber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0, thank you. All right, move on to J3, approval of additional 0.5 FTE for extended day kindergarten.
Yes, thank you. As you see on the agenda, as we continue to monitor enrollment throughout the school year, sometimes a lot of the information comes at the staffing plan, but then as shifts take place from the staffing plan through the beginning of the school year, there are other occasions in which we do bring additional staffing requests to the board, and these are 2 instances that are an example of that. So with that, I'll let Dr. Adkins talk you through some of the shifts and the enrollments and why the request.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me a few minutes tonight. This is always exciting because what this means is more kids are coming to our district. So as Dr. Layden mentioned, when we came in March to present our minimum staffing plan, we had a certain set of numbers which actually, due to the timing of preparing the plan and getting it to the board, are from mid to late February. But since that time, we've had enough new students register in kindergarten at Blackberry Creek and John Stewart to justify combining our half-day and full-day classes and request another 0.5 FTE for each site from the board. One of the reasons why we do this now is due to the wait listing. If we were to not do this now, we'd have a number of students at both sites that we would have to wait list for families, and they would not be able to then make successive plans for the fall. We want to be able to add the staff now in accordance with our minimum staffing plan guidelines, planning for that full 5-day return next year. So that way we are able to include all of our students. With this addition, we will not need to wait list anyone, and will instead create an opportunity for us to still accept yet more students at both sites. Granted, 2 to 3 students per site, but still creating room for kindergartners at each site. We do have a significant amount of home turnover in those established communities, which is resulting in some of these students coming in, and the numbers that we are using to request this are hard counts of numbers. These aren't pending numbers. These aren't students whose families have come by and said, hey, we're thinking about buying in the area. These are people who have registered, paid fees, closed on their homes, et cetera. So We're excited to be able to ask for this addition. This will give us 3 full-day sections at each site instead of 2 full-day sections and a half-day section. So are there any questions?
Chris, does this allow for those teachers or FTEs that we cut the other day to potentially bring one of those back? Is that an opportunity?
Potentially. It does potentially create that opportunity. We've not yet gotten completely into the assignment portion of our staffing process. That is being done as we speak, so that we can share with staff where they'll be on May 6th and May 7th this year. And then once we do that, we'll know where our remaining openings may be. And the reason I kind of give that hedged answer is there may be an existing, I don't know, 3rd grade teacher that'd like to teach kindergarten. And so the opening may actually be somewhere else because of internal transfer first, but that remains to be seen.
Okay.
Good question.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve an additional .5 FTE for extended day kindergarten at Kaneland Blackberry Creek and Kaneland John Stewart Elementary Schools for the 2021-22 school year.
So moved.
And a second? And a roll call.
Mrs. Witt?
Aye.
Mrs. Junk?
Aye.
Mr. Rivas?
Aye.
Mrs. Sparber?
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak?
Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to J4, approval of increase of FTE from .5 to 1 for Educational Services Secretary.
Thank you. Dr. Adkins, turn it right back over to you. You're waiting.
Thank you. Again, it's been a year like no other, I think, as we've all discussed. Our Ed Services Department currently comprises our 2 Ed Services Director and our Personalized Learning Coordinator. With the changes this year and with the changes we anticipate for the foreseeable future, there's a significant increase in the workload for our Ed Services Department to be able to put together not only the planning presentations that we bring to the board, there's also all the backstage or what I would call offstage work. The procurement, the grant allocations, the acquisition of materials and resources, the disbursement of those things. On top of that this year, we also have a maternity leave for one of our coordinators for ELL, which is resulting in a significant increase in the workload for processing of paperwork, contacting families, arranging tutoring, and translation services, et cetera, because of that maternity leave. So we do feel the need and the time has come. It was one of the things that we mentioned at the minimum staffing plan that was on our radar, and we're at a point of critical mass with being able to maintain those off-stage services through the Ed Services Department. We currently have a .5 employee. We'd like to increase that employee to 1.0. The total impact to the district would be somewhere between $19,000 and $25,000 depending on insurance elections, because by going to 40 hours a week, they'd be eligible for insurance. So $19,000 would be they don't take insurance, $25,000 would be depending on single, family, spouse, children, that kind of thing.
Okay, any questions? No? All right, I will entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve an increase of FTE from .5 to 1 for Educational Services Secretary position. In a second,
Second.
and a roll call.
Mrs. Junk?
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak? Mr. Rivas?
Aye.
Mrs. Sparber?
Aye.
Mrs. Witt?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to
Thank you.
J5, approval of amended school calendar.
Yes, yes, thank you. Typically in April, after spring break or early May, we bring a recommendation to amend the current school calendar if needed based on emergency days that were used throughout the winter. Some years we're thankful that we have no emergency days or snow days and we don't need to do that. This year though, we do need one day through today, which was March 11th. If you recall, that was an emergency day that we utilized on that day. And then as a result, we need to add, because we did not use it as a remote day or remote learning planning day, we wanted to ensure that day back on site with staff. So to make up for that day, we would then need to, as typical, add an additional day to the end of the school year. So the recommendation is just the next calendar day that follows, which is Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. So it's my recommendation that we add that day to the end of the school year to make sure we meet our full obligation. And then after discussion and upon approval, we will make sure we send something to parents. We put it on the website. And then also, as you know, at the end of the school year, when the calendar in the school year is completed, we do send a final school calendar for approval to the Regional Office of Education and also to the State Board of Education. So I'd be happy to address any questions that you have.
Yes. Remote days that you have in here. As a matter of fact, we're starting out with remote days. You mentioned earlier about installing cameras and what have you and such. So is the remote day going to be different than the remote days we've been nurturing to this year?
If we do, as we plan for next year, as you'll hear a little bit more in the return update, any days that we would have the remainder of this school year, if we do have another emergency day, or we do have another reason not to have school and have an emergency day, rather than using an emergency day, we can use remote learning days. And if we do use the remote learning days, they would be full synchronous learning days. So I think that answers your question, kind of like we had during the adaptive pause.
These that are allotted right now, the one in start the year and the ones in November are going to be that way as well?
Yes, and those are approved as the remote learning planning days to plan for the transitions, that we had 5 of those in which to use, but the remote learning days themselves, due to the adaptive pause during this school year, districts have shifted back and forth without having to use emergency days. And that's what we would do with any future days the remainder of this year if an emergency day were needed.
All right, so you used 4 and you got 1 in your pocket? Did I hear that right? You got
No,
5 of them?
we've used all 5 of our planning days.
For next year?
Oh.
The plan is for next year, right?
No, that's to close this
Oh,
school year.
this year, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
this
Duh.
school year from just this past March.
All right, my fault. there.
Yep.
All right. No, I always think of these, when I see these, I always think of next year. I didn't even look at the
It is
date.
usually the
All right,
following
cool.
school year.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, never mind.
Awesome. Any other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the updated 2020-21 school calendar.
So moved.
And a second,
Second.
and a roll call.
Mrs. Pavlak?
Aye.
Mr. Rivas?
Aye.
Mrs. Farber?
Aye.
Mrs. Witt?
Aye.
Mrs. Junk?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to the superintendent report.
Yes, we'll start with turning it over to Dr. Fuchs tonight. She has a couple reports that will share some information that's foundational to some of the topics that we have that will follow. So with that, Dr. Fuchs, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. The first thing that I wanted to mention is that we do have an FAC meeting on Thursday night. If anybody's interested, please let me know, and I will send you the link. I think that we're going to make it Zoom. We were going back and forth this afternoon trying to decide, but I think we're going to land with Zoom. So you'll need the link, so let me know. Gail, we do have a health insurance meeting on Thursday at 4, and I did send the link out. Please let me know if you need anything.
No, I'm good.
Okay, and then the KHS Master Facility Plan, Mrs. Maris and the 2 architects presented the plan to the Kaneland High School staff, the draft I should call it, because it's not the plan, but the draft of the plan, right before spring break. I think it was March 17th. And so the next steps in our process is to share the information with the FPC and the CAC, which are both meeting next week. Following that, we'll take their feedback, bring it back to the Master Facility Steering Committee, and then that is in preparation for the plan to come to the Board of Education in May. So that's the timeline and some steps in between that we're planning to take. Any questions on that? Okay.
I wasn't able to attend the last meeting. Can you issue that, send it to me?
Yeah, I'll send you the minutes, and then I think it was recorded.
Oh, was it?
Yes, so I can get you that information so that you are caught up with this, well, actually, it was in person.
It wasn't.
Yeah, it
first,
was.
at our
Yeah,
high
so
school.
it couldn't have been
And you
recorded.
shifted on me, that's why I couldn't
I'm
go.
sorry.
But you still have the presentation slides.
Yeah, we can definitely send you the slides.
Okay.
So, and then the last thing that I wanted to tell everyone is that we have heard now the initial amount. It's a preliminary. I haven't seen that it's been finalized for what's called ESSER 3. This is the federal money. It's from the stimulus packages. If you'll recall, ESSER 1, we received about $154,000. That money is already accounted for and recorded and collected. ESSER 2 is $519,000, a little bit more, $69. That we are in the process of applying for, and then once we get that finalized, we'll collect that. And then the ESSER 3, the newest money, is $1.165 million. $1.165 million. That application is not going to be available until July 1, so that money definitely will go to next fiscal year. With ESSER 2, at this point, I'm not sure how much we'll get from this year that'll be booked for this year, but we're gonna move that forward and try to get most of it spent for this year because we have the expenditures. So that's just an update on the ESSER money. Again, ESSER 3 is 1.165.
Can you remind me?
Application is available July 1.
If it's spent on personnel, what's the reduction?
10.4%, and then July 1, it goes down to 10.31%. That's the federally funded amount that we have to pay extra, and that's only for certified personnel. So what we'll do is if there are any personnel like parapros or nursing staff that help with summer school, they wouldn't get the penalty, so we can use it for things like that. So we'll try to maximize our use of those dollars, but in reality, with the number of extra staff that we may need next year, we'll probably end up using some for certified.
Right. Okay, thank you.
That was my question. I was gonna ask you, do you typically able to offset them so you don't have to pay that fee?
That's what we'd like to do. I talked to, you know how we meet with all the different business managers across the counties and things like that? The thing that I heard most often is that they're using it for one-time things, such as technology that is related to COVID. And then also not only technology, but projects, plexiglass, one-time kinds of things. And cleaning, that's not one time, but anything that's not TRS related is how we want to try to spend it. But again, we'll balance it and see how much of it actually has to be in personnel. We will start working on that at our retreat in June in preparation for the July 1 opening.
Do you know what part of cleaning can be included?
The enhanced portion.
So that was fairly expensive if that continues.
Yeah.
So not the typical one we're having this month, no?
Right, not our everyday cleaning, just the enhanced portion.
And how much more is that?
It was initially supposed to be around 450,000, 460, I think it was. It took us a little while to get up and running, so it's not gonna be quite that much. I can check on the bills and let you know what we've spent, but, we'll budget for that, and then we'll put a portion of it into the plan if enhanced cleaning is required for next year, because there's been some new CDC information come out that is talking about surfaces, that the virus is not necessarily transferred via surface. It's mostly airborne, so we'll have to wait and see what kind of guidance we're given to know if it's required. So, good questions.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Fuchs.
Those were my 3 items.
Yep, I have a couple updates that I want to share also. The primary one and the largest one being, as we've talked so many times this year about the guidance from the state. Unfortunately, right now, the guidance has not changed. The guidance is remaining the same. And from our Kane County Health Department update today, they do not see, at least in the foreseeable future, they didn't outline that timeline for us, which would have been nice, but they still see the foreseeable future being the same guidance that we have right now. So our plan for the fall is to continue to work towards the commitment to have all of our students back, EC through 12, 5 days a week for full days. As you know, right now, the high school, we weren't able to come back without significant change to a number of schedules, and the middle school, like unfortunately many middle schools around the state and the area, half days due to the lunch piece. But knowing that this guidance, our hope is that the guidance stays this as the most stringent, but as the vaccine is expanded and maybe students take the vaccine and the ages change, then maybe we're able to move back to a full in-person return that would be even less stringent than the 3 feet. I don't know if that's happening or when that might happen, but our plan right now and the commitment is to have a full return at the 3 feet, 6 feet guidance. Some of the challenges will be transportation, if the buses stay the same at 49 plus a bus driver, if the cafeteria, lunches, if those remain the same, gymnasiums, those areas, if that stays the same, those will continue to be our challenges. But our commitment is to the return full in person, and the May 24th board meeting, which is a little over a month, is our target date to bring back the plan to the board. Unfortunately, you'll hear the disclaimer probably 15 times that if the guidance changes, we need to shift. But the good thing is with our cameras that we'll now have and with the training that we have currently with our staff, nimble adaptive pauses back and forth between in-person to remote learning will be able to take place much more easily, and we're going to continue to work to make sure that all of those transitions are quick and that it's full synchronous learning for our students when we do have any of those transitions like we had over between Thanksgiving and the holiday break. A couple other notes. Again, that's the 24th. State task force, there are about 3 or 4 state task forces that are working on return to learn plans. There's the Illinois Principals Association, there's the large unit school district, there's the State Board of Education, and they are regularly seeking feedback for what will help us transition easier, what will help us get our students back. I think as we make our recommendations, the biggest challenge is still the quarantining and social distancing at 6 feet. That one, there does not seem to be a lot of flexibility, at least right now, through the Illinois Department of Public Health. And then also, as I shared, the buses and the cafeteria and some of the size of our classrooms, especially at the high school and a couple of the buildings that Dr. Mumm mentioned. 2 of our elementary schools are slightly different. So what we are doing now is taking our staffing and looking at our student enrollment and then our staffing, and then our recommendation will come back to the board on the 24th based on the 3-foot and the 6-foot with a full return. So you'll still see, I'm sure, some different qualifications that will be needed. High school may need to use Meredith for a portion of the day. There might be creative places to eat lunch, how to eat lunch, where to eat lunch. Some of those topics are still going to be there until the full return. And I think while the challenges of the positivity rate that we heard about, that it's almost doubled in the last 6 weeks, which is a frustration, but on the positive side, the number of vaccinations that are taking place far outweigh the number of cases, so we hope that will continue. We hope that with the 16-year-old on up that want to be that choose to be vaccinated can start doing that today. They think it'll be about 3 to 4 weeks from what we heard that the supply will meet the demand, because they do know for about the next 3 weeks, the new groups of 16-year-olds on up that are now qualify, there will be more looking for shots than what the supply will have, but they believe in about 3 to 4 weeks that should balance out. So they seem to be pretty positive that heading into the summer, those that are looking for the vaccine should be able to get it heading into the summer and next school year. And again, we'll continue to monitor the guidance that we receive. One of the other notes that the IDPH and the state board is talking about right now, well, not really the IDPH at all, I apologize. The state board is medical remote versus family choice remote. So it looks like for next year, the expectation for requirement would be a medical remote option and not a family choice option. If you recall, last June when we started putting together the final touches of the return to learn plan based on the changing guidance, the state superintendent, Carmen Ayala, stepped in and due to equity issues, mandated a remote option, a family choice option, and that has not happened yet for this year. So our recommendation is going to be for medical only. And again, the terminology that they're using is qualifying medical conditions. And they've not determined yet, or at least we don't have the final guidance yet, if that qualifying medical condition is for just the individual, or is it somebody in their household, is it family members. So those are the things we're still kind of waiting for to see what that will look like. And hopefully by May 4th or May 24th, we'll have more of that information, and also we'll be able to provide any changes that happen after that. Other notes, while they did share today, countywide, as we've all seen in the news, with the county and the region both increasing, one of the things that we are positive and happy to share, that with our teachers, remember we monitor our metrics daily, and then one of the positive things with our staff, we averaged the last 2 weeks between 0 and 4 staff members out per day due to either a positive case or close contacting. So our staff is doing a great job taking care of themselves, and they're able to come every day to work. Our student attendance rate has been between 1.5% and 1.9% out due to close contacts or positive cases. So that's also well. So I think what we're doing in Kaneland, I think our practices in our building, I think our student practices, our family practices, we're not seeing, knock on wood somewhere, we're not seeing some of the same increases yet that they're seeing across the county. But again, we'll continue to monitor that. We monitor daily. We'll provide updates. And again, the biggest concern right now for schools is not necessarily the positivity rate. It's the close contact and quarantine at 3 feet. So we'll continue to monitor that and see what those impacts will be. So that's the return update. And again, more information will follow. And then the Kane County Health Department update. Kind of piggyback a couple of Dr. Fuchs's topics. I wanted her to go first. The foundation meeting is tomorrow night, and we did shift last minute from an in-person meeting to a Zoom meeting. So the foundation members will be getting that Zoom link. There were a couple members due to schedules and due to quarantining and wanting to stay home and not get out in the mix yet, asked for it to be Zoom, so we'll shift that to Zoom. 2 primary topics that we have to discuss are the transition and possible action to hire an executive director through the foundation and the foundation dollars. That will take place tomorrow. The conversation will at least. And then also the golf outing. As you know, the golf outing is in September. It is typically the 3rd Thursday. This year we had to move it. It's going to be the 4th Thursday. All of that information will follow, but those are the foundation topics. FPC, as Dr. Fuchs mentioned, meets. We'll have a couple updates there with the facility plan, summer projects, and solar. Give an update to that group because they didn't meet in the fall. So we'll provide that update. And then also CAC, we're going to get some feedback on how in-person learning is going, summer projects, and then also Dr. Fuchs talked about summer updates, or summer projects and technology updates as needed. So those are
Great.
my updates. Thank you for enduring and indulging me, so thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
So again, you brought up the cameras and such.
yes.
Again, I know there's not to go too deep into it, but at the end of the day, is there a MOA agreement that still needs to be written to allow for those cameras?
For next year,
Yes, sir.
we've not had that conversation yet, so
But does
anything that we would have
that
going into
need
next
to
school year.
happen, though?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Does that need to happen?
Yes, we would have one going into another. Well, I can't say for sure, but
Because
typically if
I know
gonna
there's
be
something
changes.
in there against cameras and stuff. That's why
Yes.
I'm bringing it up.
Most memorandums of understanding that you have are for a school year. So when this school year comes to an end, that MOU would come to an end, or the MOUs or agreements that we have, letters of agreement or memorandum of understanding, would come to a close, and then any new letters of agreement or memorandum of understanding would then be drawn up going into the next school year. So when this school year ends, anything that we have in the current MOU would also come to an end.
I understand that, but what I'm asking specifically is about the use of cameras, if we need to use them in the rooms.
Yes, we can use them in the rooms.
So there's no more that needs to be written up? for
Not
next
right
year?
now.
Okay.
As far as when our students quarantine, yes, they can use those cameras and/or their own device if they have just right off their machine. We're working with IT to make sure that they have those up and running as students are quarantined, and then they bring them into the teachers and get the teachers ready to use them.
Okay.
Thank you.
And what percentage of classes will be, all classes, or a percentage of classes that will have the capability? As
Our
far as
goal is
using the cameras?
any teacher that has a student quarantined will be trained and ready to use those. So we're hoping it'll be very few quarantined students, but we know that there will be, so those teachers will be ready to use them. So it'll be all the classrooms that need them.
So we have enough of them?
Yes.
Okay.
Any board reports? Or topics for future agendas?
I have one, but I'm not gonna be here, so
Well, thumbs down.
I'll just
you.
share it with the rest of them and see what they take of it.
That sounds like a plan. All right, I don't believe there are any public comments. So
That's
we
correct.
do have closed session tonight. The Board of Education is scheduled for closed session where there will be no action taken following the session. Therefore, after the vote to go into closed session, the recording of tonight's meeting will be concluded. Tonight's closed session is for Illinois School Code 122C1. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved, no. Second.
Second, all right, by Teresa. So Megan, Teresa, and a roll call.
Mrs. Pavlak?
Aye.
Mr. Rivas?
Aye.
Mrs. Sparber?
Aye.
Mrs. Witt?
Aye.
Mrs. Junk?
Motion carries.